being told, because you're a white man, you can't have this job. We can't have you fronting these anymore.
That is insane.
Yeah.
You also mates with Tommy Robinson. You guys have got like a real bromance going on.
Look, the Tommy thing, I was saying, I've had friends of mine say they won't be friends with me now, falling out with me because of my association with Tommy Robinson. It is just people screaming at each other. It's a circus. These are people with like an IQ of like 50.
Is there any guest you've booked who you are so excited, this is going to be great, then you've met them and you're thinking, this person's a flipping lunatic? Or
there have been people, I shouldn't say, because the big name people...
You should definitely say.
Yeah, there's one or two that I can't put out. Just they weren't very good. It's got to be... Well, look, the only one to sort of put their, kick the whatever out of the trolley or whatever, toys out the trolley, is,
Well, Andrew, you started in mainstream journalism.
Yeah.
Why did you leave it?
So I was the guy, I was telling you this just before, I was the guy who did the page 3 girl that you twist around on the iPad for The Sun. So The Sun started digitalizing their page 3 girl and having her 3D on the iPad, and I was doing night shifts. I was 22 and I had to make sure that was working. I wasn't very techie, but I was on the phone to sort of Ukrainian tech support at 5 a.m. every night going, guys, please, you still can't see her left breast, it's not working. That was you take what job you can get. I hated it. I hated every second of it.
Sure, you did.
I wanted it. I wanted a serious job. And so I went abroad and I thought I'll try and emulate Louis Theroux. I'm going to be the Louis Theroux kind of thing because I love Louis. I love what he does. And so I did that and I thought I'll be the Louis Theroux who can speak different languages. So I went and learned lots of languages and started making kind of independent movies, documentaries, and did all that. Got one out on the BBC eventually, but then was told, because you're a white man, we can't have you fronting these anymore.
Really?
We'll call JJ, they said. They said,
never called me, mate. They never called me.
They didn't. They were after Reggie Yates. He got your job. So they, in the end, it was, it was like 5 years of them saying, oh, great idea. Oh yeah, we'll take this, we'll take that, but we need a minority to be the guy fronting it. And
Are you serious?
Oh yeah.
But you're Jewish, you're a minority.
I said that once, and I think people who considered that Jews might be overrepresented, or at least represented, enough on TV, were very angry at me even suggesting that. So
that is insane.
Yeah. Not that I would ever, but that's when you're in a difficult position because you don't want to ever get a job because of your thing.
But if they're saying to you, you can't have this job because you're not an ethnic minority, like, hello, I am an ethnic minority though. Doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't really. And then if you look at the stats, they don't have stats on the Jews really, but black people, Asian people, and so on were at that time already very heavily overrepresented on TV. So it's not even like they can say no, but you're already overrepresented. What they're really saying is, well, Jews, you guys are wealthy, and look, some are, but so are many Hindus and Muslims and some black people as well. I don't know how you're doing.
I'm doing okay. I'm doing all right.
Gold watch goes in the air.
So you didn't really stop doing mainstream. Mainstream stopped doing you, essentially. They said no.
Yeah, they said no. It's a hard one, isn't it? Because so many of us, some people go out and do horrible crimes and then suddenly they turn up as like Christian evangelicals and all those kinds of things. Others among us go, hey, we were treated unfairly. And I suppose if you look at it from a cultish point of view, on the one hand, it's a selfish thing. It's like you're going, hey, these guys screwed me over. Now I'm going to start thinking about things I don't like about them, But on the other hand, it is, if you take it as I do, as we're all in a kind of cultish mainstream here. The mainstream is to an extent cultish. If you look back through any moment in history, the mainstream belief in that time and place we now look on as being, wow, that was mental, the stuff that they thought, whether it was the Bolsheviks or slave owners or whatever or the supremacist stuff of the Nazis, all that stuff, you look back now, but at the time seemed totally normal. So it's inevitable that any kind of mainstream, including ours right now, will have cultish elements to it. And like in any cult, you adhere to it often until something happens in the cult that pushes you out and alienates you. So I see that time and time again. I before I got into this kind of culture war stuff on YouTube, I was really looking into Scientology and Jehovah's Witnesses, Hasidic Jews, like the kind of extreme cults, and what makes people leave. And generally, they almost never leave, or just for no reason. They never just go, you know what, I don't really fancy Scientology anymore. What happens is they get treated so badly by the cult that they're able to then go, go, okay, I don't have to link my personality, my identity to this cult.
Yeah.
I can now look at it a little bit more objectively, and I might listen to some of the other people who I used to see as enemies. Enemies in Scientology are called suppressive people. I might listen to those guys. So similarly, in the mainstream, something terrible happens. Okay, I've got 5 years of being told, because you're a white man, you can't have this job. All of the moments where before I might have gone, oh no, those guys who don't like the BBC are racist or whatever, I felt like, hey, maybe I'll listen to a few of them, see what they have to say. And then you go, this doesn't seem quite right. It doesn't seem fair. And you want to help the others to leave the cult, you know?
Yeah.
And that's what led to me leaving it, I guess.
Are you a psychopath?
Yeah. What? No. I think I ask people that a lot. Is that why you asked me?
That's why I asked you. Yeah, I did my research. Yeah.
It's my favorite question to ask people. I'm fascinated by that. I mean, that's another reason why I started doing the Louis Theroux kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I love the idea of like what's going on behind someone else's eyes, what's in their mind, what are they thinking?
That sounds weird.
Yeah,
But...
yeah. It does. But like even now, I'm thinking, gosh, I want to interview some psychopaths who like they're so fascinating to talk to, and part of that is because we're so used to, again, that part of that mainstream culture was the fence culture, and everybody being upset and everybody having to pretend that they have certain virtuous opinions and so on. I think we're all fed up with that. And when you talk to a psychopath who admits they're a psychopath, who's just, you are a psychopath, that is it. There's no longer that front. They're no longer trying to pretend that they're the good guy all the time. Yeah. So what a relief that is to be able to sit down with someone for an hour and say, what do you really think about this and that? And they're going to tell you. I mean, they might still lie to you, of course, but they're going to tell. They're not going to try and pretend they're better people than they are. So so it's great. I think. It's everybody thinks they're more of an empath than anything else, don't they? And I think it's a failure to understand that other people have thoughts as well and have they have compassion. So I'd like to think I'm fairly empathetic. I get very upset when sad things happen, but ultimately empathy, I think, is misunderstood in our world, and we tend to think it means feeling sorry for someone in our own tribe. So Owen Jones might say, look at the Palestinian deaths and so on. But a lot of people on that side might be less concerned about what's happening in Sudan or what's happening to the Uyghur Muslims in China. Yeah. And then they might say that on Twitter, like just to prove a point, like, I looked at both, but they're not really getting as upset. So I wonder if true empathy is really being able to understand the arguments of people on the other side to you and not assuming that they are acting with malice.
Interesting that he didn't actually answer the question. Convenience. Katie Hopkins accused you of...
Speaking of psychopaths.
Speaking of psychopaths. She said you didn't do enough prep and you just rushed things through and you don't do any real work. Is she right there, Andrew?
I think she was... when people sometimes have a go at others and they're really concealing something about themselves, I think that might have been an example of that. I think Katie, got upset because I said, are you sad? And it might have come across as being facetious. Does it make you sad that you have been cancelled and so on? But if she had actually watched a lot of my material before, she would know that's just how I ask questions. I'm often being sincere in a... maybe in a kind of faux naive or simple way. Maybe it is quite Therouvian. I don't know. I'm just asking things the way I would ask a friend. Like, oh man, does that make you sad? If she knew me and if she had watched anything before coming on, she'd know that's just me and my style. Yeah. I think I understand if she just thought I was Jeremy Paxman, I'm going, does it make you sad? It might be something that she would take offense from. So I think she hadn't done her homework in that respect. And she became defensive. And I think there are very easy ways to win an argument on YouTube because you've got people baying for blood. Yeah. And so you just say, you've not done your work. And people go, maybe he hasn't. You say, you're losing this argument. And people think, oh, maybe he is. Ultimately, I'm thinking at this time, like, wow, this is great TV. Yeah. This is really interesting. And also, I don't get very easily offended. So I'm just like, have a go at me. Come on, bring it on. I'd done loads of research on Katie, which I think she was maybe upset about as well, because I told her before we started that I was about to ask her, and I'm going to have to push her on some things, like we need a final solution for Islam, like laughing at dead Derek, Kate Garraway's husband. Some of those things which I find morally repugnant. It doesn't mean I think she's a morally repugnant person. I think she's really interesting. She's funny. She's a cause for good in many ways. But I need to be able to say, hey, some of these things I'm not on board with. Let's discuss. Yeah. And I told her before that I was going to do that, and I think she didn't like that either. So I think it was the fact that I'd done research on her that she didn't like, maybe. But she'd be welcome back on the show anytime. She was great. It was a great episode. We put that social clip out all the time. Yeah. So I'm proud of it.
You also mates with Tommy Robinson. I was surprised to hear this, to be honest. You had him on your show. Yeah. But you guys have got like a real bromance going on.
Yeah, we play paddle tennis. He keeps asking me to come to Chicken George or some sort of restaurant. He wants me to come and have some chicken. I'm a vegetarian. The thing is with Tommy, yeah, well,
wait. Before we get back to Tommy,
yeah.
Why are you a vegetarian?
Well, this is the thing, isn't it? Everyone expects, because they see me as sort of centre right or whatever, they expect me to have the same views that a bunch of people have. And I think again, that's just rubbish, isn't it? You don't want a world. What a boring world that is.
Is your wife vegetarian?
That's the reason.
That's why. There you go. There you go.
That's true. Look, but I always felt weird about eating animals. I found it weird, and that it doesn't have to come from an ideological place. It doesn't have to come from this kind of everyone else needs to do what I do. I don't have a problem with it. You guys go and do your thing. I don't even want people feeling guilty. Eat your foie gras, stuff the duck's stomach, do what you want, because it's already been done. The thing's dead anyway, and it's not suffering now. It's in your mouth. Great. I just don't want to put a dead animal in my mouth. I never felt comfortable about it. It made me feel a bit gross.
Even kosher?
I was never kosher. I never did any of the Jewish stuff.
Okay.
And I would probably, I don't want to push kind of a kosher and halal ban, but I think if it were to happen, I wouldn't be very against that. Everyone's saying, all the Jews have to leave the country. Well, not really. You can go vegetarian, firstly.
Or import the meat.
Tortured meat.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Now, back to Tommy.
Yeah.
So how are you two playing paddle? Was this like a topless thing?
We played paddle. There were with
like
a couple of
Top Gun,
IDF guys who were topless.
baby oil.
They were very muscular and made me feel not good enough, I would say, compared to them. These were like these good-looking, young, muscular, Top Gun gods. They were not women who beat me and Tommy. And they just absolutely mullered us. They just tore us apart, obviously, because they're two like young athletic guys.
How are you even playing paddle against these guys?
Tommy and I, we met up in Israel when he was out recently. Caused the biggest controversy ever by him being there among the Jews who were just like in a civil war about it.
Yeah.
And look, the Tommy thing, I was saying, ultimately, there was nothing worse to me. I would say it's abhorrent, evil, this kind of guilt by association or judging someone because they've got a bad reputation. I've had friends of mine say they won't be friends with me now, falling out with me because of my association with Tommy Robinson. And I said to one particular friend the other day, I said, well, what is it you don't like about him? What are some of the beliefs you don't like? And he said, it's not the point. It's how he's perceived and then how we're perceived as friends of yours. And I think there's nothing more cowardly than that. The amount of times, again, in history, the number of times there've been whether it's the Nazis, whether it's the Bolsheviks, whoever's come in and done awful things, I would like to think no matter how big that pressure is to not befriend someone who at that time is unpopular, I would disregard it. I go, I don't care. It's about this is a real human being. But, he's a total idiot a lot of the time. And I put out, because of that controversy with the sort of civil war among Jews about Tommy Robinson, I put out like a Substack talking to the Jewish people saying, guys, like you don't have a choice right now. You've got the far left or the left who just hate you, and you've got the Islamists who hate you. You have the far right who hate you. This is a guy who has said time and time again, if you love England, you're in England, then you're English. And he very much supports Jewish people. Yes, he's got a bad track record and yada, yada. I wrote this whole thing. And then the next morning I get up, I'm at this hotel, and on Twitter, Tommy's having a go at someone, calling them a effing homosexual. And I'm like, oh, fuss. I've just aligned myself with this guy. So I went and spoke to him, and I was like, Tommy, mate, I've just written this thing, and now you've come out and put this nonsense. And he goes, I know, I shouldn't have. I don't know what I was doing. And that's it. So no, he definitely shouldn't be a politician. He's an activist who is going to be very flawed because he's going to constantly come out and do these stupid things. He's also really smart in other ways. And that's it. He's a human being. And if he was going around saying the thing about these Arabs or the thing about these black, but he doesn't. I've never heard him do any of that. So
he does it about Islam, though.
It's a belief system. You'd do it about Scientology, wouldn't you?
I mean, I don't.
But if someone did?
Then I would say, I think freedom for religious belief is protected, and I wouldn't go around antagonising and slagging off someone for whatever religion they have, unless their religion is, harming kids or something. Then well what? Well, what, Mr. Gold?
Well, look, okay. Well, Tommy grew up in an area of Luton where his, I believe it's his cousin was groomed and horribly treated by the grooming gangs, done in the name of Islam, and covered up for many, many years. So what you just said, I wouldn't have a go at a belief system unless it was harming children. Tommy has a very direct and personal relationship with that.
But which he does. But then equally, you could say, well, I'm a Catholic, practicing Catholic.
Yep.
There's been plenty of Catholic priests throughout history who have been abusing kids.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that all Catholics then are bad. But
Yeah.
the presumption that I think people have with Tommy Robinson is that if he says, well, there's these Pakistani grooming gangs, all Muslims are then seen as being bad, and that's clearly not the case.
That's the difficult thing we have here. I mean, with the Catholics, it wasn't the Catholic population.
No,
we're talking about. So we're not talking about a bunch of imams. We do have problems with imams, and it used to be something that we could talk about on TV channels. Channel 4 20 years ago did an undercover look into the mosques.
Yeah.
Now it goes without saying that 20 years on, with millions more people, or I think it's millions more Muslims in this country since that time, it must be much, much worse and much more egregious in that than it was 20 years ago when Channel 4 did it. So bad, we've crossed that point, and now Channel 4 would never in a million years even think of doing that documentary. So we're in a bit of a crisis, I think. The BBC did one as well around that time, Stacey Dooley, looking at Luton. Again, the issues will now be 100 times worse and 100 times more worthy of being documentaries from our leading TV channels, and yet 100 times less likely to actually be done now because of the situation. So ultimately, it needs people who are able to be outside of that cult, let's say, if I can continue with that kind of BBC Channel 4 cult system, but people who are willing to sacrifice everything and say things that make them unpopular. You need to be unpopular for a long time if you're going to push back against this. And it's never going to be like Mr. Nice Guy coming out and doing it. You're going to get your Tommy Robinsons because the mainstream hasn't done their job, because they're scared. I understand why they're scared. Now, it's not all Muslims. You just had Layla Cunningham on here, and what a wonderful, lovely person she is. Ultimately, we're facing a part of the big crisis we have right now is that people are no longer being incentivized to adapt to this country. They want the country to adapt to them. Yeah. And Layla Cunningham is, to me, just from looking at her, speaking to her, talking with her, English, right? At least civically. She's not ethnically English. You notice among every minority nowadays, you can tell there's a big difference because they all changed their names. I mean, the names of their children. You're a black man, right?
Correct.
But your name is John James.
Yeah.
Right? John Barnes, Ian Wright. Look at the names now, first names of black players who play for Arsenal or Tottenham or whoever, English people. And Jewish people I know, they start to give sort of Israeli names and things like that. And Muslim people, Muhammad's the biggest name. I think that's a really interesting indicator, the name of what intentions you have for raising your child in this country. I think black people, when you were born, were desperate to just like, let's fit in. Yeah. Jewish people, certainly my ancestors, they were like, please don't let anyone notice, that we changed the name from Goldstein, my ancestors did, to Gold. It's still a bit of a giveaway, but it's better. It's less Jewishified, and a lot of Jews did that. And whether they should have to have felt that way or not, that's another argument to have. But Andrew, it's a British name. Yeah. My parents very much had this feeling of this is going to be a British kid, English kid, goes to an English school, doesn't go to a secluded Jewish school, those kinds of things. So absolutely not every Muslim, but I think...
But these are also Christian names, not just English. Like, so for me, I'm John after John the Baptist and James as another disciple. Sure. So they're biblical. Yeah. And Christianity, as you know, in many parts of Africa is the majority religion.
That's true, and this is a Christian country. Now, obviously, those countries are Christian because of what this country did. It did a lot of good and bad, loads and loads of bad in Africa, of course. But for whatever reason, these are people with Christian values come to this country. It's a country, whether it's Christian or secular, I think it is a Christian country, but it's mostly secular in how it governs. Yeah. It has been based off the back of that kind of Christianity. This was an interesting point that I think it was Rafe Haydel Manku made some time ago, because I was always thinking, well, it is difficult. We've got to take refugees from somewhere, right? Because there's a horrible world out there, and there are some people who need shelter and whatever. But those refugees have to go somewhere. He made this point of, yes, but people should be taking refugees from their continent at least. So at least the culture is not so dissimilar. We could take people from Ukraine and Russia or whatever, whereas in the Middle East, it shouldn't really be our responsibility because the culture clash is too great. And that's what we're facing now.
Yeah. Speaking of grooming gangs, you were on Piers Morgan Uncensored.
Yeah.
With Layla Cunningham.
Yeah.
Talking about grooming gangs.
Yeah.
How did that all go down? So I saw Layla. Layla was perceived to have stormed off. She came on here and she said that she didn't storm off. She had to leave to go and do a rally for reform. But it seems like you're often having to battle and debate with some people who I think are just freaking idiots.
It's really difficult because on the one hand, I mean, Piers gets a lot of flack, but on the other, you know, you've got to give him credit as well for being pretty much the only person who shows passionate views on both sides. A lot of Jewish people have considered anti-Semitic to criticize Israel, and I think mostly they feel that way because the people who do never extol the virtues of the only democracy in the Middle East, the only place where gays and the only place where different minorities actually do get on with one another and all those kinds of things. And often when people do say that, we go, well, at least they've said those bits. They're not just hating Jews. They understand it's a complicated situation, but they're criticizing Israel. We understand that. So Piers has these people with both sides, and he's open to both of those sides. So fair play to him for that. The platform itself is a really difficult one. Morally, I suppose, as well. You know, it is just people screaming at each other. It's a circus. And particularly because we're all doing it from different places. So often I'm like, I'd be talking, and then the other guy is going, hang on, let me talk. And I stop. And then I hear for another 10 seconds, the guys go, Andrew, let me talk. And I'm like, well, I haven't said anything for ages. So I say that. And then he's like, oh, and you're getting that. So that adds to it. When you've got that screaming, shouting match, and then you're doing it on Skype and there's like a 5-second delay each time, that's really, really difficult. So that was happening with me. It was happening with Layla. It was happening with everyone. Layla, I don't think has made it entirely clear. I mean, even I watched her on yours, and she wasn't entirely clear because she said, no, I went off because I had this other thing to go to, which she did reference when she was going off and all of that, so I get that. But she also seemed to say to you, I went off because these people were talking such nonsense, I couldn't even, you know, she said both of the things. Yeah. And it did feel in the moment that it was sort of both. She has to go anyway, and she's fed up. Yeah. She was sort of looking at her phone quite a bit, and I thought, she's quite badass. She's like, this is like your big Piers Morgan moment. Like he's a big name, Piers Morgan. You're on this big show and all that. And she's just like, I don't know if she was looking at notes, which like fair enough, or if she was just like, I've got other shit to do. These people are idiots. Yeah. That's kind of her personality. And like fair play, she was pretty badass. I guess she had to do this other thing. You know, that's what I think it was. But she was also just very dismissive of what these are people with like an IQ of like 50 who were on the podcast. And I think she just got fed up.
I see on social media, you having to defend yourself quite a bit, a fair amount of time I think spent against anti-Semitism. Do you think it's gotten worse in recent times, or are there just more bots online now?
It's really hard to know. I had this big kind of showdown with this guy called Steve Laws. I don't want to give him too much, you know, whatever. Yeah. Who was part of the Homeland Party who wants to remigrate or deport.
So you and I would be getting deported.
We'd be out. And so would anyone who's just sort of Polish or whatever. You know, he wasn't entirely clear of, does it have to be both parents are entirely English? And he said that we would find out by looking at people's medical records. That's the kind of authoritarian world he wants, where doctors going in and checking blood tests to see who stays and who goes. So to me, pretty abhorrent stuff. But they have a way of swarming when any of their guys are on their on sort of more mainstream shows and things like that. They swarm you. They all come into the comments. Is it bots? Is it a very organized faction of what seems like a lot of people, but in the scheme of things is not? I don't know. And it got it got quite bad. You know, they made all sorts of like fake accounts of me that were like, you know, with a big nose and stuff like that, all that kind of
Jewish
stuff.
Tropes.
Yeah, the Jewish tropes, which like, you know, I've been doing this years. It doesn't really offend me. It offends sometimes family members of mine who see this stuff. Of course. You know, that's not nice for them. But is it such a, you know, it's not such a big deal. But the thing with it was, it appeared that I had entirely lost this kind of debate to this guy. You know, that I think it appeared that like, he's the winner, look, But in the time since then, my Twitter has grown faster than his significantly. And my YouTube, you know, he doesn't even have that kind of, but much, much faster. Yeah. Which would seem to me to suggest that people watch it and they go, I'm not going to, this guy's horrible. But I've seen someone else got a lot of flack, which was Alex Phillips of Talk TV. She got all these guys were on to her now. They were all kicking off at her. It was horrible. All the things they were saying to her, really not very nice. And I sort of thought, well, I can put in a comment underneath going, oh, come on, guys, F you, Alex is great. But then I'm going to get all this shit as well. Yeah. It's not going to help Alex. And then someone else will get, and then they'll get all this shit as well. So I messaged Alex. I called her. How you doing? Blah, blah, blah. And similarly, when it happened to me and it was all happening, quite a few people called me. But I don't want them. What's the point? Like, oh, right, thanks. You know, can you please write a thing under my thing supporting me? What will happen to them?
Yeah.
So it's just a total waste of time. And I think that's actually the great, if those guys do want to make inroads, and they've got some good points, you know, they are starting to feel as a kind of ethnicity, as becoming vulnerable in their own country. And a lot of people worried about it, and I get it. But this kind of method of making themselves think they've won an argument because they've just absolutely swarmed someone, it just makes nobody want to interact with them. So this is the problem, that some of those guys who are the kind of communicators of that, you know, even if they're not as far right as those guys, some of those guys want to communicate, but they don't disavow their followers who are incredibly abusive. Well, no one wants to have a chat with you anymore. No one wants you on their shows, because we're just going to get so much horrible. We want to have a conversation. So if you've attracted a following that is so toxic, like, fine, I respect your right to do that. Like, you go do that thing, but no one's going to want to have a conversation with you, and you're not going to make any inroads politically. But you'll feel like you've won on Twitter.
Yeah. Well, excluding Mr. Laws, is there any guest you've booked who you are so excited, think this is going to be great, then you've met them and you're thinking, this person's a flipping lunatic or a dickhead?
There've been people, I shouldn't say, because the big name people,
you should definitely say
the big name people tend to be good, because there's a reason that they're you know, they're the big name people. There's a reason that Douglas Murray is Douglas Murray. He's going to come in and he's going to perform, and he's going to just be wonderful and amazing, and it's going to be wonderful. I suppose, I mean, that was disappointing in a sense, Douglas Murray, because I was so excited he was coming on. And I thought, oh, this is so big for my channel, and it's going to get 1 million views and so on. And how exciting for me. And I did get to meet a really impressive person. But in the week before, I saw every single day he was on like 10 different platforms. He's just got like no end of energy. And so day after day, I was like, oh, okay, there he is on Ben Shapiro. Oh, there he is on Piers. On Piers again, a second time. Okay. So by the time I was able to film it and then put it out a week later, by the time we edit it and stuff, it's like everyone's got, fatigue. You know, they don't. So it didn't get anywhere near as many views. Didn't make anything like the cultural impact. It's like part of his tour. But, you know, so there's that disappointment you get sometimes with guests. You book them and you realize they've just done like 10 other things. He was wonderful. And then there's one or two that I can't put out. They're not famous people. That's why it's not worth saying who they are. But they weren't very good. And they're talking and you're going, I don't mind you being really anti this thing or really pro this thing or even being nuanced, but be passionate, be a good speaker. And those are things that I often get people commenting saying, hey, you know what would be a good idea? Why don't you have like just one normal guy on? Why don't you have me on? Why don't you have like and it's like, no, this is I know it doesn't look like it, but those interviewees, especially the good ones, when I'm sitting there like, and you must know that feeling, you're sitting there going, gosh, you're not feeling that right now. But you're thinking, God, this is a virtuoso. This guy can hold this. He's doing this. That is a skill. And it's a harnessed skill. Is that the word, harnessed skill? Yeah, you harness skill. Exactly. I don't even have words. Some of these people can pluck a word from, anything. And they're wonderful. And unfortunately, some people think they would be good at it. They imagine they're good at it. They speak to their friends and they're good at it. They message me, and once or twice I've been convinced, okay, this person doesn't really have a following as such, but that's a really interesting thing. Then they come on and they're going, the words aren't coming to them. And I'm sort of saying, okay, but you've made that point, but you made an opposite point a second ago. Where do you stand? They go, yeah, I don't know really. And you're like, I can't put this out. So that happens sometimes.
What about the biggest diva?
That's you.
I've not been on your show before.
Yeah, and that's why. Biggest diva. Well, look, I mean, it's got to be a woman or a gay person if it's a diva, right? Your sexist question. Mariah Carey never came on. It's got to be. Well, I mean, look, the only one to sort of put their, kick the whatever out of the trolley or whatever toys out of the trolley is Katie Hopkins and Eni Aluko. Very different sides of the aisle.
Hey, well, let's talk about Eni Aluko.
Yeah, but get your lawyers involved though, because you've got to be careful.
That's right, I'm black. She won't sue me. It's fine.
Oh, Ian Wright's the one. Ask Ian Wright about that.
What happened between you two? Oh. you just interviewed her, and she showed herself for who she is, and then seemed to blame you for that.
I think that. I mean, at first she seemed to think it went well. And then I spoke about how it hadn't gone well, because everyone then went, and that's an awkward thing, look, she's a human being. She is a human being. And I had just had Joey Barton on, who, again, very controversial person, has done a lot of things that I don't approve of, but again, he's a human being. And she started tweeting, "You'd never have someone like me on, would you?" And it's like, are you kidding? Obviously I would. Like, please come on. Why wouldn't I have you on? But that shows how her worldview is so distorted.
Yeah.
How could she possibly think I wouldn't have her on? That's
so funny that to go full circle at the beginning, I mean, you're being told by mainstream media, you can't present these shows because you're not an ethnic minority. And then she, who was a world-class female footballer at one point, is then saying to you, you won't have me on because I'm an ethnic minority. The complete opposite meeting at the centre there.
Maybe she meant because she's on the left, but she's not even a lefty.
I don't think she's left.
No, because she's like she's from like, I believe, I don't know how much of public, so I know, but she's like Christian family. You know, they're like proper. She's not like woke. And I was trying to, after we had that debate about, for anyone who's not watched it, it was a debate about DEI. But at the end, I did ask a bit about the trans thing in football because it's a big thing, you know. And like, she didn't give proper answers. She was sort of skirting around it, and I was like, okay, you're not woke. I don't think you're woke, Eni Aluko. But I don't know what her views are on the trans thing before I get sued for that. I actually don't know. But my guess was that she's not. Like, not particularly against or for it, but she's not like your typical woke person.
If she doesn't want men doing commentary and punditry in the women's game, I'm pretty sure she doesn't want men playing in the women's game.
Well, this is the irony, because the likes of Megan Rapinoe, the American footballer, I imagine would.
Megan Rapinoe is all for it.
Yeah, she wants men in the game.
She wants men in the game,
but wouldn't want them actual men commenting.
Yeah.
So it's a confusing thing. But yeah, she came on and look, I like to have people on, and I want to try and do the opposite of the kind of circus we were talking about before. I want to be able to have like, hey, let's have so I had Chris Packham on recently, and I think we did manage to have that kind of.
He's boring.
Well, that was the thing. You know,
he's probably vegetarian as well, isn't he?
He probably is. Yeah.
Probably a vegan, actually. That's even worse than a vegetarian.
He might be. No, because at least they've got some balls. You know, what am I? Yeah, I'll have a pavlova because I can't see the eggs in it or whatever. You know, pathetic. But Packham, he gave it his all and all that, and we could have a conversation. He was like, I like being woke because it means I'm a good person. I was like, all right. But he's all right. He's a sweet guy. And Tilly Middlehurst was one. She's a lefty, young. She had a big debate with Charlie Kirk.
Yeah,
she came on, and we had a very and people in the comments were loving it. They're going, wow, to see two people have this kind of without it developing into a slagging match and all that. Great, people like that. Eni Aluko, I was prepared to do that, but within minutes, she's attacking me. Yeah. And then all I can do is defend myself.
Yeah.
She cannot not attack. She was an attacker, wasn't she? She was
a striker.
Yeah. She can't not attack. So yeah, and I was very respectful to her in saying, because she kept saying, I got this job because of me and all that. And I was going, I'm sure that is true, Eni. I don't know that. I'm sure that's true. You're obviously very good. Even, I don't know if she is really, but she's not as bad as everyone says. Sometimes some of the things she said, like we need to have, 2 number 10s behind a striker. That's actually a reasonable football comment that everyone said, 2 number 10s. So yes, she counted wrong for how many goals Richarlison scored. Like, it's not, she might be bad, but whatever, I don't really care that much. The point is, I wanted to have this debate about DEI. I don't know why she was given the job or not, but let's talk about the wider thing. And she seemed unable to answer without just saying, yeah, but I'm brilliant. So I had to get past that by being, yes, you're brilliant, but let's talk about the bigger thing. And when I told her what happened to me, she just had no empathy, no sympathy, no anything. It was just like, yeah, but that didn't happen kind of thing. So how are we supposed to believe her? She won't believe other people. Yeah. And that's what led to that. We sort of messaged for a while afterwards. I can't reveal the it's private messages, but she seemed to think it was all right. She seemed to be okay with me, but every now and then she would not be happy with the things I'd put out, and she'd send me this like barrage of stuff. And my wife was like, God, who is this? And also, unfortunately, it's just one of those things. Some people, when you click add on the messages, it saves it like as their name. It's like you don't write their name. It's already like their thing. Like if they message you and someone messages you, you can click add to contacts and it already has their name in it, how they've written it.
Yeah.
So it's not me writing their name.
Yeah.
But Eni's one, for some reason, has like a heart next to it. So I've just clicked save and I'm on holiday and my wife's looking over and I'm like messaging all the time, like I'm just going, Eni, please, I'm on holiday, just leave me alone. And she's looking over, there's just a heart, Eni and a heart. It's like, who's this woman you're talking to? I mean, luckily there's a lot of trust between my wife and me, but bloody hell. I don't know why that is. She'll know why the heart pops up. But she's not the worst person she's fine.
Okay, she's fine. You just don't want to get sued.
Yep.
Fine. How did you get Robbie Williams? Because for me, I think you might be the biggest solo male British YouTuber. I think that may be the case, and you have these huge names on. How did you get Robbie Williams?
That's nice. I never thought of that. Maybe that's true.
I
But
think
it's
it
only
might
been
be
going
true.
a couple of years as well.
Yeah.
Well, that's why when you're that big, Robbie comes over. Robbie is into. Again, it's one of those things where you don't want to give away too much about someone or whatever. But he's quite into. And I think this is public record. He's into like UFOs and aliens. He's really interested. He's talked publicly several times about having seen a UFO and stuff like that. So as a result of that, he followed my friend Sean Atwood, who I think he'd seen on Banged Up Abroad. Sean had been arrested. He'd been in prison for 5 years for sort of...
You got a lot of friends who've been arrested, haven't you?
Yeah. When you're in this world, man, when you're in this world and you don't judge, I'm just not going to judge. Anyone, but Eni Aluko, Jeremy Corbyn, or like anyone who's different to me, they can come for dinner. They can be. We can hang out. I don't like this. They've been in prison. They've been there. So and Sean is one of the nicest people I've ever met. He was in prison for dealing drugs and things, and in America, in Arizona's deadliest prison or something like that. And he's become a YouTuber since then. He's got one of the biggest channels as well. He's got this big channel. All about, and a lot of it covers the weird stuff, and as of the Masons and the aliens and all that. And I think Robbie was into that and got in touch with him, maybe to do with his prison story. I don't exactly know how it all worked. And so Sean put me on to Rob, as you're supposed to call him, because Robbie's his stage name.
Okay.
I was the biggest Robbie Williams fan ever as a kid.
Really?
And Sean was like in America in prison for like Robbie's ascendancy. So he was just like, yeah, it's Robbie. And I'm like, Robbie Williams, are you kidding? Are you kidding? And he is, we chat. And he's the nicest guy, and he doesn't necessarily share or not share my political views. It's not something he talks about very much.
Yeah.
But what a lovely guy. And I went on his tour. He was on tour in Spain. So I went out and I said to him, I just interviewed him like on Zoom. And I was very excited about all that. And I said, hi, can I email it? I was emailing, hi, Rob, hello. I'm coming to your gig in Barcelona, me and my mate.
Me and my mate Tommy.
Yeah, certainly not. I certainly would not bring Tommy to a Robbie concert. But I said, I'm going to be there in a few weeks. I thought he's not even going to remember who I am.
Yeah.
And he wrote back, "Oh, cool, mate. Let me know when you're out here," kind of thing. And I went to Barcelona then. This is like 6 weeks later, and I thought, I'm not even going to message him because I don't want to bother him.
Yeah.
And then he messaged me, "Hey, mate, are you here yet?" I was shocked that he remembered who I was and that I was going to be there and all that. And he does a pub quiz kind of thing with his whole tour group of like 80 people. And he said, "I've got a pub quiz in this place. Do you want to come and be on my team because you seem clever?" And I've since realized he takes this very seriously, the pub quiz.
Wow.
So I went to this like very exclusive kind of place. I sort of bought like shoes because I dress very, and like, what do I do? What do I wear? I was nervous all day. And he let my mate come as well. He was like, "Is he clever as well?" I was like, "Yeah." I was like, "All right." We were both on his team. And it was unbelievable. We spent the whole evening with him, just chatting with him the next couple of days. Just a normal, lovely guy. But I didn't help with the pub quiz, really. I didn't know anything. It's one thing saying you went to a posh school. It's totally another when you're sat there with Robbie trying to answer all the questions.
Yeah.
And the only one I got out of like 40 questions that no one else was going to get, and I always remember because I was so excited, that it was what was the name of the French president of FIFA before like the first World Cup or something like that.
What was it?
Jules Rimet.
Oh, of course.
Because of the song.
Cup.
The song.
Oh, Jules
the cup,
Rimet,
because of the song. Jules Rimet Still Gleaming.
Okay.
And I got
Very
that.
good.
I was so happy. But we came second. He wasn't happy with it. Out of like 5 or 6 groups. But after that, we stayed in contact and all of that. And I nudged. Can we do an sit down interview in person, all of that? And he was always like, yeah. But with these guys, they're so busy.
Yeah.
And eventually, we got it done. And like it's not the typical Heretics topic. It didn't get like millions of views. It did well on Spotify. That's where it did smash it.
Yeah.
But what a pleasure to sit down with him. I was so happy.
That's amazing. So it's funny because I heard that you got in touch with Robbie because you had some friends who work in the music industry. They kind of control the music industry, and that's how you were able to get.
That is the kind of thing they say to me. And I did have that thing with I don't want to say his name again, but the racist who I argued with, and he was saying, I can't remember if it was on air or afterwards, where he was saying like he was talking about having more viewers or Twitter, and he was like, "Yeah, but you got a head start because you had all your media friends and you had all this, and you've been going for ages and all that." And I was like, "Mate, you've been going much longer than me. I've been going 2 years." And I don't have one person in the media. I don't have a media contact at all. But these things, they believe it, don't they?
It's nuts.
Yeah.
Is there anyone who you've decided to not platform?
Well, it's hard, isn't it? That interview itself a couple months ago, that did make me rethink it. I've gone in very bullish typically, and I'm like, I would interview Hitler. I would interview anyone. Sit down with me. Let's have a conversation.
Yeah.
One thing I've seen, not just my interview of him, but there was also at the same time, Piers Morgan did one of that Nick Fuentes character.
Yeah.
And because of whether it's the swarming, whether it's the bots, whatever it is, it's just like you can't win. And you're working on very different terminologies, really. You know, things that Piers Morgan's going like, but that's racist. And he's like, yeah. You know, so at what point do you go, okay, with Nick Fuentes it's different because he's such a big name anyway. But at what point do you go, this is someone who didn't have a big following. I've now put them on, and now I have, 2 years ago, did a very different thing. I had 0 subscribers, right? 2.5 years ago. Now suddenly there's 750,000 subscribers. That's just YouTube. It goes out to, and then they share it everywhere. Millions of people end up seeing this one thing.
Yeah.
You're giving a huge platform and a huge responsibility. Now, it's really hard to work this through in my mind without going, well, hang on. How do I stop myself becoming the very mainstream that was a closed, you know, gatekeeping kind of thing that I hated? So I think it's just a case of taking each one, you know, going, okay, each individual case, is there benefit to this? Can we have a conversation that's worthwhile without just simply giving a platform to a person who I think is stupid and abhorrent?
Because there'll be some people who will say, if you have on Hitler or whoever, you're normalizing those views, and lots of people are going to see them and think, oh, actually, they didn't see that. Maybe he's got a point about these things.
Yeah, well, that's an interesting point, because the issue with the Steve Laws thing, the issue there was I've been called, you know, because I disagree with him, I've got all the far right going, you're just a coward, blah, 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 and all this stuff. And yet the actual far right podcasts at that time were too scared to have him on. So even the far right guys who have very different views to me, but people I could sit down with and talk with, they hadn't had him on. They were scared to have him on. Once I did, they all had him on. So I had, in that sense, made him safe, at least in the far right, at least for a conversation. Some of them disavowed him. You know, Carl Benjamin's one of the main guys in that. He did a thing to camera saying, these ideas are stupid. You know, he just engaged with the ideas. He was saying they're stupid. He wasn't morally, because that's not going to work with his audience. This guy's a racist. That's not going to work. But he just said, this is stupid. We need to have a proper conversation. But all of those guys and people on the Lotus Eaters, suddenly they were okay to have him on. And I gave him that. So that is something to think about.
How's your wife feel about you interviewing some of these people?
Well, look, that's an interesting question, because it is one of those things that when you do this, as my friend I you know spoke about at the beginning, made a point about, you do bring your friends into it. You know, friends of yours, family members, and so on. They are now known as the guy who is friends with the podcaster who had Tommy Robinson on his show. That's tough, and it made it tough for my wife in public life in terms of her work. Because work is, you know, any kind of work. She was working at a law firm. Any kind of law firm, I think it's similar in cultishness to the BBC in terms of, you've got the hierarchy, you could be fired, people are very scared, no one says. And so people did behave differently with her, and they have done that. But it's a hard one for me to talk about publicly on here, because I don't want to publicly talk about her political beliefs and such. And to say, you know, ultimately, she's Argentinian. She came to this. I lived out there.
And she's a vegetarian.
Yeah, I know. That was not easy.
Whoa.
We both went veggie in Argentina. We were living there. I was living there for 6 years when I met her. And so we moved here. She was very excited about the idea of moving to this country, as many Argentinian people are. She's from kind of a, you know, middle class background herself. She was a lawyer and all those kinds of things. So it wasn't that kind of aspirational.
Yeah, okay.
It wasn't a Thai bride, is what I'm saying. It was a mail order kind of thing. She was like university educated, lawyer, blah, 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 but had this vision of the United Kingdom as being a little bit like Argentina, but doing everything that Argentina didn't do. Like there wasn't the misogyny on the street. There wasn't these guys catcalling quite as often. It was like a better version in many ways that worked, and it was very exciting for her to come to this country. And I don't even need to finish that story of her arriving here. Everybody listening who understands what I think a lot of us understand knows it wasn't what she was expecting. For reasons to do with what I think the left is letting in. So yeah, I think, you know, that gives you an idea of, you know, she's cool.
Who is a heretic that you admire?
Yeah, everyone asks me this, and I always forget to actually think of it. Isn't that mad? I should have that like immediately there. Yeah. But you don't want to say an obvious one, because you've got the show and you've just said J.K. Rowling and Ricky Gervais, great. Mother Teresa. And you don't want to say really obscure one, because it's like you're showing off, isn't it? You know? some Nouvelle Vague director, Francois Truffaut. Thanks for asking. So I don't know. Yeah, I don't want to say Tommy because he does say mental things, and I'm
Yes.
who should it be?
I mean,
who's yours? Have you thought of one?
Is there a problem? I don't know if you've maybe you've met someone more recently who you think calls out the establishment and maybe has his own podcast with a national newspaper. I don't know.
Constantine Kissin.
Constantine fucking.
Sorry, JJ.
There.
Yeah.
Just edit that part out. So
But I'm still scared of saying your last name in case I get it wrong. I think it's Anicioso. Is that right? It's not even nearly right. Fuck.
You speak 7 languages. My surname is spelled phonetically. Most Nigerian names.
I've got to remember which order the I and the S and the I. I did it like 5 times because I had to go to reception this morning and say I'm here for JJ Anicioso. Ansioso would be anxious in Spanish, which is how I'm feeling right now.
JJ Anxious. That's my wrestling name. Aniciobi. But don't worry, I'm not offending people.
Aniciobi.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
You're number 1, and then someone like Constantine Kissin. Catherine Burble Singh.
She's fantastic, isn't she?
There you
She's
go.
great.
I went to her school the other day.
Oh, like
Michaela.
just hanging around the school gates.
At the gates. Catherine, let me in. She had me go and do a little talk or whatever, and then she has people in. I mean, I'm sure if you got in touch with her, she has people. She has people in, like, and they'll give talks to the teachers and stuff because that's how they continue the kind of ideological drive at that school. And like, man, like, I mean, you know what the school is. If anyone doesn't look up Michaela's school, because I don't have time to go into it now, but you have to be there. I know people say that, but you have to be there. Yeah. And when you're there, they took us around, like these 2 11-year-old kids took my wife and me around class to class, and you go in for like 5 minutes while they're teaching. You go into it's almost looked like they were acting, like they were like, oh, they're coming around the corner, kids, and they do this. But it's like when I was at school, I was asleep, like on the desk. Do you know what I mean? I was so tired and so bored, and you don't sleep properly, do you, as a kid? You need more sleep. So all my memories were just like head on the table, and now I'm in detention. It's like, but I couldn't help it. I'm so tired. These kids, every 5 seconds, they're going like, it was like 10-year-old kids. They're being taught about English literature, and it was like the word was soothsayer. It was a new word for them. So the teacher's going, repeat after. Can you repeat the word soothsayer? The whole class goes, soothsayer. They're like that. It's like an army kind of thing. And I'm at the back, so I couldn't see them all very well. But not Catherine, the teacher who made in her image, calls out like, I don't know, someone's name. Say their name's JJ. Okay, JJ, because they are all ethnic. It's like 99% ethnic, right? Jermaine Genus. She's going, Jermaine Genus, you didn't. They're going like, they go, right, you didn't say it loud enough. That's what they're saying. You weren't passionate enough, so you get demerit, right? A demerit. I don't know what that is, but if you get 2 of those, it's detention. Just for that, because he wasn't enthusiastic enough. So I would have hated it because this is like army stuff. Yeah. But you're going like, these are kids who have got no chances. Yeah. These are kids brought up in like inner city, poverty, and they've got amazing results. So they've given from nothing, they've got a chance, and they adapt to the culture. Yeah. Because she makes them watch England games. She says, you are English. We're at lunch, I'm sitting having lunch, and suddenly the teacher goes, I'm like, what's going on here? You're getting like, right? And suddenly they're all reciting Rudyard Kipling's poem, If, then you're a man, my son. And I'm like, they're like, no. Everyone's going really for it. And then the teachers after going, he was particularly good, you were particularly good. So they are monitored. Yeah. And so they come out of it. I'm sure it won't always work. At some point, there'll be like a murderer who happened to have gone to the school. It'll be terrible because it's just a sheer number of people. Yeah. But wow, they come out of it. They've got every chance. Now, if the kid doesn't do well after that, I suppose that's on the kid. Like, good luck. Well done to Catherine Burble Singh for what she does.
I just wrote my column that was out yesterday in the newspaper about Catherine Burble Singh. And I was basically saying that Bridget Phillipson, our education secretary, should be begging Catherine Burble Singh, get her down to Downing Street and implement what she's done at Michaela's school across all of our state schools.
Scale it out across the country. Now, it's hard. I mean, I asked Catherine, but Catherine is, I can't think of her word. She is very sure of herself. Very, very confident in her ability, and so should she be. So when you put that to her, it's a bit like, well, yeah, but you need a Catherine, basically. You need a very good person who is not going to let anything slip in charge of every one of those schools. Yeah, maybe that's possible. You got to pay these people well. They got to be very, very good. Yeah. The teachers looked incredibly happy there. The teachers bought into it, and the teachers are often lefties who join and gradually start to see, like, you know what, this is the right way. So, yeah.
Well, look, quickly, quick fire questions. Well, I'm going to say some names. Tell me what you think.
Okay.
Jordan Peterson.
Yeah. Well, you know. Well, the thing depends what you mean by Jordan. Jordan Peterson is amazing. Helped so many men, right? I don't know what it is to be an incel or to be just a very lonely man or whatever it is. It must be very horrible. It must be sad. And he helped them. And he didn't say, be mean to the women. He said, those women have a choice. And they're only going to choose you if you make yourself a better person. What an amazing message. Absolutely vilified, told he's the worst person ever, kicked to the side to the point that he's having mental health breakdowns and so forth. And who do we have to in that space then? Where do they go? They go to Andrew Tate. Yeah. Right. And what annoys me is people on the left will probably put the two of them in the same bracket. Yeah. They have no idea. And now the Nick Fuentes is those kinds of people. Really, really sad. He went very religious, the Peterson stuff. It's not for me. I've listened to speeches where I've literally had no idea what he's talking about for half an hour about, Lucifer is all that stuff. Not for me, but fine. I wish he stayed on the psychology stuff. But yeah, good.
Rufus Hound?
I don't know very much about him except we had a thing, and it's this expression, isn't it? What is it? Go and burn your head or something. Go and drown your head. He said something like that to some women about the trans thing, and so he was a typical example of someone in that kind of mainstream cult, although he's probably not that mainstream anymore. No one wants anything to do with him. Who believes that men can be women for some reason, but actually comes out with stuff that I would say is fairly misogynistic.
Agreed. Narinder Kaur.
Very hard to know because you want to give everyone a good chance, don't you? With like the Hanlon's razor kind of thing, that never assume malice when it can be, stupidity. But that it is at the same time is a fact that there are a bunch of people she would be considered to be among them who seem to earn a living by being the kind of baddie. Maybe they weren't talented enough to get the job on a channel that aligns with their politics. So they're the baddie on GB News. They're the baddie on, James Bloodworth was another one of these people. Always the baddie. I mean, he's a bit smarter, I think, than Narinder. But the baddie, and it's a hard one because you find after many years, like I haven't actually developed any kind of following. I'm just the baddie on the TV channel, and then they become quite bitter. I think some of these guys. So I don't know without being inside her head. Is she deliberately being obtuse? Because she can make money from it, or is she just she really thinks the things she thinks?
Owen Jones?
I was let down, but I was a bit disappointed with Owen Jones because he, after that Steve Laws episode, came in aggressively attacking me, saying, "Why didn't you address that he's a Nazi or something?" It's like, I think we had a real argument for an hour. I didn't use the word Nazi. Okay, I think. Do you want me to say Owen he's a Nazi? Okay, he's a Nazi if you want. Fine, he is. Yeah. I mean, not literally because he's not 1930s part of the Nazi party. Yeah, but maybe he's a neo-Nazi. What do you want here? I didn't know what he wanted, and he came in so aggressively and he said, "You created this stuff because you made that space for these guys." Whereas I would say to him, like, "Hang on, no, you are the guys who made it acceptable on mainstream TV to judge people by their immutable characteristics. It wasn't acceptable 20 years ago. Now it's okay to say, no, but he's a white man, so I don't give a shit about what he thinks. Oh, this white person, this man, this whatever, he can't speak because of their..." Well, of course, the far right were going to start. It took them a while, actually. They were a bit slow. I mean, they should have immediately started pushing back. They've started now going, well, we can do this, can we? Well, he's black, he's Jewish, he's that, and so on. So I think Owen Jones and their ideology was inadvertently, probably well-meaning, responsible for creating those people, although he thinks it of me. But what was disappointing was I wanted to have a dialogue with him. Yeah. And I found it was quite one-dimensional. It was just having a go at each other. I wanted to understand him. He wanted to win against me. And that's the difference.
Liam Tufts?
He's amazing. I love Liam Tufts. He's one of my favorite people in the world. He is probably the closest thing to kind of a working class version of me. He's very curious and interesting and interested. And everyone he interviews, he gets the best out of them. And what's great about him and Tommy, I mean, the thing with those two is that no matter how much the far right has pushed them, they haven't moved towards it. They know where the line is, and they say, no, I'm not going to give away my black friends, like give them up to you. Yeah. I'm not going to give up my Jewish friends to you. And they would be much wealthier and more popular if they did. There were very few people, because I know some people would say, oh, I'm just a good person anyway, but subconsciously, I think it happens. You start to move. You hear people make more arguments, and it's like, oh, I'll go with them then, so people aren't having a go at me. They are impervious to it. So good on them.
Starmer.
It's boring, isn't he? Just boring rubbish.
Farage?
Not boring. I don't want to trust any politician. He's a politician, and it sounds like in school, he was a horrible, vile racist, and not even like a subtle one. He was like a really bad one, and not just Jews, not just, but it was like all of the. It was horrible, but people change. Apparently that completely stopped from his sort of 20s onwards. So, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt unless shown otherwise. I don't want to be holding people responsible for stuff they did 20, 30, 40 years ago with him. He seems all right. I'd probably vote for reform right now, I think.
Donald Trump?
Yeah, I think I'm look, I'm very sort of pro-Israel, so a lot of people won't agree, but I think he's been really, really good. Who knows what's going to happen at the end of all of these wars? Are we going to be in World War III? I don't know. He's really funny, and he's also a ridiculous person who has probably done some not very nice things over the years. But yeah, I like him.
And lastly, your uncle, Netanyahu.
I was thinking my actual uncle. I was like, how do you know him? See, the thing about my uncle, Netanyahu, yeah, I think similar. He's probably done some bad things. He probably had to do some bad things. What I often say to those who are like very angry about the Israeli policy, and there's a lot to probably criticize about it, is I just say, okay, imagine you're made prime minister of Israel tomorrow. Like that's your prime minister, and not in like a begrudgingly kind of way. Like, no, you've won, you're prime minister. These are your people. I think 60, 70% of them are Jews of different ethnicities. You've got the Ethiopian Jews, you've got the Hasidic, well, they're not different ethnicity, Ashkenazi, the Mizrahi, all that. But then you've got the Bedouins, you've got the Christians, 10% Christian Arab mostly, it's 20% of Muslims in your country. These are, you've got to look after those people. They are your citizens. What do you do next? You've just been invaded, you didn't expect it, or maybe you didn't expect it, and thousands of your people died. The equivalent in this country would have been tens and tens of thousands. We've not had anything like it. What do you do next? Is it enough to go in and like bomb a few people and then come back out when there are still Hamas tunnels everywhere? Hamas is still hiding behind schools and things. I don't think there's necessarily a right or wrong answer. I think that's part of the problem today, is everyone's like, this is right morally. Morality is pretty subjective. People might disagree with that. So I would just say to anyone who hates Netanyahu, I mean, most Israelis hate him now. And that's the other thing. A lot of these guys who are seen as like these bad political actors, we only know about the stuff that affects us. Netanyahu in Israel, there's loads of controversies about like money and finances, embezzlement. I know it's a stereotype, but it's politicians. It's politicians, isn't it? I mean, I used to live in Argentina, for fuck's sake. I mean, it's nuts. Christina Kirchner hid $10 million in a monastery with the nuns. She kept the nuns watching. I mean, think of that. But Netanyahu, he's not very well liked over there by even fervent Zionists over there. So I don't know what the answer is. He's probably not a nice guy. He speaks better than I thought, because I didn't hear him. He was like Putin to me. Like for years and years, it's like I never hear this guy talk. The last 2 years, you suddenly see him out talking. He's got that kind of Obama voice. He speaks got almost American Obama voice, and he's incredibly intelligent and eloquent. But who knows what he's just really doing.
All right, tell me about your live podcast show before.
End. We've got Suella is coming, and we've got
a comedian.
Tony Lapidus is coming in before to do his sort of political impressions and stuff. So that's kicking off on the 11th of March in Camden.
That's next week.
Yeah. It's happening soon. So there's still a few tickets. And
so that's next Wednesday.
Next Wednesday evening. And I don't know what we can do with a link or something.
We can put a link in the description.
That could be good. Yeah. If not, you'll find it in the last few videos I've done on Heretics. There's the links there as well.
Go to Heretics.
Go to Heretics. The biggest show, as you said, the biggest solo match. It's quite a lot of qualifications
a lot
there.
Of caveats there. Biggest male British solo
small willies.
Would you ever change your name back to Goldstein?
No, I hate that.
You hate the name Goldstein?
I hate it, yeah.
People are going to say you're a self-hating Jew.
I know they will. It's just nebbish. It sounds nebbish to me. No, Andrew Gold, that's the name. I've always been, and plus it was my dad. It was before I was born. So that's the name I've always known myself as.
Yeah.
So... screw it. It's good, and people love it. A lot of people don't know it's Jewish. If they don't know Jews, so they're just like Gold.
That's a great name.
Oh yeah, Gold.
What about Drew instead of Andrew?
Some people say that. I don't give a fuck.
I think Drew sounds cooler than
Drew Gold.
Drew Gold.
Drew Gold, Australian journalist. Going to be fighting some alligators. I'm Drew Gold. Drew, Andy, Andrew.
No, not Andy, because there's only one Andy now. It's
Randy.
Andy. Yeah. Don't want to be associated with him.
No.
Although maybe you do. You don't care about being associated with bad characters
Well, I'd have him on the show. I'd be a fool not to, wouldn't I?
Well, Drew Gold, thanks for joining us, mate.
Thanks for having me, mate.
No problem at all. Hope you enjoyed it. Leave your comments below, like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you again later.